It was supposed to be a perfect day, a small boat, drifting peacefully across the turquoise waters. Julia and her husband Marc had planned this family trip for weeks, a special birthday celebration for their son Leo. Their daughter Emma danced on the deck, her laughter mixing with the sound of the sea. For a few hours, life felt simple, peaceful, almost too perfect. But sometimes peace is just the silence before the storm. Wind begins to rise, faint thunder in the distance. Mark looked toward the horizon. The clouds were changing fast, growing darker, heavier, like a bruise spreading across the sky. "Maybe we should head back," he said, but Julia smiled nervously. "It's just a little wind, Mark. Let's enjoy it while we can." They didn't know. Those clouds weren't just a storm. They were a warning. Within minutes, the wind howled. Waves grew taller than their boat. The sky cracked open with lightning. Rain hit like bullets. The radio was dead. GPS gone. They were trapped in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by an angry, endless ocean. Julia grabbed her children and shouted, "Hold on." Then everything went black. When Julia opened her eyes, she was lying on the ground. The world was quiet, too quiet. No waves, no wind. Only the sound of her own breathing. She sat up slowly. Sand. Endless sand stretched to the horizon. Rusted shipwrecks lay half buried, their hulls twisted like skeletons. The ocean was gone. Mark was beside her, coughing up mud. The children, alive, but terrified. "Where's the water?" Leo whispered. Julia didn't have an answer. They walked for hours across what used to be the ocean floor. Fish bones glittered under the sun. Broken anchors and coral crumbled beneath their feet. The air smelled of salt and death. As night fell, they built a small fire. Emma pointed to a dark shape moving in the distance. "Mom, what is that?" It looked like a shadow at first. Then it moved again, faster, crawling. A wet, scraping sound echoed across the sand. Mark grabbed a broken metal rod from a shipwreck. The thing slithered closer, its skin pale and slick. Then it screamed, a sound not human, not animal, something from the deep. Julia screamed for her children to run. The creature lunged, dragging itself across the sand with clawed limbs. It had no eyes, only gills and teeth, hundreds of them. Mark swung the metal rod, hitting it again and again until it stopped moving. But when the sun rose, they saw there were more, dozens, hundreds, crawling from cracks in the ground where the ocean once was. The storm had awakened them, creatures from the abyss, older than humanity. Now that the water was gone, they were free. Days passed. The family searched for food and water, but everything was dry. The heat was unbearable. Julia's lips cracked, her hands bled. Still, she kept moving, for her children. At night, they hid inside an overturned shipwreck. Julia could hear the creatures outside, sniffing, scratching the metal, searching for them. Marc whispered, "They hunt by sound." "Stay quiet," but Leo started coughing. The noise echoed, and the scratching stopped. Silence. Then pounding. The ship shook as something rammed against it from outside. Metal screamed. "Run!" Marc shouted. They escaped through a hole in the hull, sprinting across the sand as the monsters burst from below. Julia held Emma's hand tightly, but Marc stumbled. One of the creatures grabbed him by the leg. Julia turned back, screaming his name. Marc looked at her, eyes full of pain. "Go! Take them!" And then he was gone. Julia fell to her knees, but there was no time to cry. She pulled her children close and kept walking across the wasteland that used to be their world. Days turned into weeks. The sun scorched the land. Oceans had vanished. Cities had fallen. Scientists on old radios said Earth's magnetic poles had reversed, a phenomenon that changed gravity, climate, and time itself. The planet was dying. But Julia refused to stop. She built a shelter from scraps of metal and broken sails. She hunted tiny lizards, found drops of water hidden in rock cracks. Her body weakened, but her spirit didn't. One night she looked at her children sleeping beside her. She whispered, "We'll survive this. I promise." The next morning the ground began to shake. The horizon cracked open, and water started to return, flooding the desert. But with it came the final wave of creatures, screaming, running, desperate to escape the rising tide. Julia carried Emma on her back and pulled Leo by the hand, running toward higher ground. Behind them, monsters drowned in the flood, dragged back into the darkness from where they came. The world was cleansing itself. When the storm finally ended, Julia stood on a cliff, watching the new sea rise again. She had lost everything except hope. She whispered to her children, "Your father's gone, but he gave us this chance. We survived.